fantastic voyage. I don't know why that song got stuck in my head. Slide, slide, step, slide, live, lives all the way, love, just sail on. just sail, just sail on. Good morning, everybody. We'll get started momentarily. Just bear with me for a second. Come along and ride on the fantastic voyage. Let's see. Just hang on one second, folks, and we'll get started. This is why I need an assistant. Okay, we're just gonna go with it. We're just gonna go with it. I'm just gonna go with that. So, with that being said, welcome everybody to How the Frack We Got Here, my political U.S. news and podcast. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, on How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Before I do get started, this is an adult podcast. This means that adult language may be used and things of graphic nature may be shown, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. There's no really other better way we can start this podcast but by simply saying, what is the state of America as we see it? Well, some people are happy, some people are mad, and some people are confused.
States across the nation face pressure to reopen local economies amid the confusion and confrontations. Cheers! There is celebration in Wisconsin. Bars and other retailers are now getting back to business after the state Supreme Court rejected a stay-at-home extension that would have prevented scenes like this.
I don't think that the risk presents any higher than me going to a grocery store.
The governor, who notes the state has one of the lowest number of coronavirus cases per capita in the Midwest, says the decision will lead to more infections and deaths.
We are the Wild West. There are no rules, no regulations. There's nothing that's compelling people to do anything other than having chaos here.
Who is an essential? With new protests, the bitter battle over staying home comes amid a grim jobs report. New weekly unemployment claims nearly hit 3 million today, as 36 million Americans filed for unemployment benefits in the past 2 months. Outside Salem, Oregon, Carrie Sussums is watching her business slip further away.
It's just been so difficult. We're maintaining. We're getting up. We're coming here every day. We're doing our best.
As overwhelmed and understaffed food banks help more Americans, the chairman of the Federal Reserve warns the economic damage to our country may be permanent unless Congress acts. Even essential workers are losing money.
Early on, some retailers and grocery stores added hazard pay for essential workers, an extra few dollars an hour. And now Kroger, which owns Ralph's, is ending that this weekend. Amazon, Target, and Walmart doing the same soon.
While signs of a new normal are emerging, the Mall of America opens next month. Another icon, McDonald's, will close play areas and some tables as employees wear masks and gloves. It comes as states like Ohio allow pools and outdoor activities to resume, while Illinois just recorded its deadliest day of the pandemic.
In nearly every state in the country, it seems with each step forward, there's also a step back. Here in Los Angeles, where beaches just reopened, more businesses can do front door or curbside pickup. But the mayor just mandated anytime anyone goes outside, they must wear a face mask. It's the face of a new reality.
Yes, it's the face of a new reality. If you've probably been noticed by now, most of the places that actually do have, they call them openings now, especially my home state of Tennessee, has started to open up businesses, everything like that, and people themselves are happy. I don't know how they're happy. I'm personally thinking they're a little bit concerned, just because the fact of the matter is, if anybody has noticed, it's still way too early. The CDC has already sat there and said this week that no state, no city or state is prepared to do any type of opening. Even more so, to push it forward would actually cause what they call second wave infections. Dr. Anthony Fauci was testified on this, and apparently he seems to be the only voice of reason.
You have warned of needless suffering and death if we push to reopen too soon. But the president has actually been sending the opposite message. I want to ask you today, what is the most important message you have for communities and states that are reopening, even as our public health experts make it clear it's too soon? Tell us what the consequences are.
Thank you very much for that question, Senator Murray. As I've said many times publicly, what we have worked out is a guideline framework of how to safely open America again. And there are several checkpoints in that, with a gateway first of showing, depending on the dynamics of an outbreak in a particular region, state, city, or area, that would really determine the speed and the pace with which one does re-enter or reopen. So my word has been, and I've been very consistent in this, that I get concerned if you have a situation where the dynamics of an outbreak in an area are such that you are not seeing that gradual over 14-day decrease that would allow you to go to phase 1. And then if you pass the checkpoints of phase 1, go to phase 2 and phase 3. What I've expressed then and again is my concern that if some areas, cities, states, or what have you, jump over those various checkpoints and prematurely open up without having the capability of being able to respond effectively and efficiently, my concern is that we will start to see little spikes that might turn into outbreaks. So therefore, I have been being very clear in my message to try to the best extent possible to go by the guidelines, which have been very well thought out and very well delineated.
So if a community
So literally what the guy just sat there and said, Dr. Anthony Fauci, who is the leading expert on infectious diseases and the go-to guy in America that we go to, has said in so many words, you are jumping the shark. Just because people are feeling a little cooped up, just because cabin fever setting in, does not give you the good idea to go ahead and go outside while the ability to basically get infected and cause a higher rate than what we're dealing with right now is completely possible. Say, for instance, if you open a bar and open it to full capacity, like Wisconsin. So forgive me on this, but I think Wisconsin's going to have an uptick in their COVID-19 cases. Really, no different than Atlanta, no different than Tennessee, no different than any other state that has eased back some restrictions. And when they ease back those restrictions, cases increase. That's only because, again, the transmission vector for this dangerous disease is honestly too high. So high, in fact, that we really should not be looking at trying to ease restrictions. If anything, we should actually be continuing them. And I know for a lot of people, the simple fact of the matter is, yes, it's a little hard to work, especially if you're an essential worker. You just saw what Kroger's did to their essential workers. Is stopping the hazard pay, which I think is asinine and crazy how they can turn around and do that in the middle of an actual outbreak, or I should say a pandemic for that matter, is that they can go ahead and sit there and say, oh, well, it's hazard pay, yes, but we're going to stop paying that to you now. I mean, it's amazing how they get away with it. Even more so amazing how in the world that, Kroger's can sit there and say these businesses that sit there and say they're for the people, and they're really not. But again, with the coronavirus out there, it does present, unfortunately, a new normal that could make really going into work obsolete.
Home could be permanent. Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey telling his employees they can work remotely forever from anywhere. As many industries grapple with how to redesign office space to minimize health risks, the historic economic crisis is also forcing companies to cut costs, potentially putting expensive real estate on the chopping block. NBC's Jacob Ward.
Bay Area tech companies were among the very first in the nation to send their people home, and Google and Facebook now say that their employees will mostly work remote for the rest of the year.
Some of New York's biggest tenants, Barclays and JP Morgan Chase, say they may not bring all employees back to the office at the same time. Austin-based Dell says more than half of its 160,000 staffers may never return to their desks. Emptier offices across the country will have a devastating ripple effect on local businesses. Many restaurants and bars rely on the weekday lunch rush and crowds at happy hour. Florists count on those big corporate orders and that bouquet on the way home. Even parking garages where business depends on commuters showing up to the office.
With people not working from home, there's definitely been a drop.
While not every worker has the luxury of working from home, those who do could save money and time. The average commute adds up to 22 workdays a year, and you'd save up to $4,000 annually on that commute. Work clothing, dry cleaning, and yes, even coffee.
For companies, it saves money, it increases productivity, it increases agility. And for the planet, we just cannot deny what this has done in a very short period of time.
Redefining life and work at home sweet home. Jolene Kent, NBC News, Los Angeles.
And she's right. Unfortunately, the new normal is actually happening, guys. A lot of people are now working more from home. Companies which are trying to save money will probably more than likely extend the idea of work from home. I know my company has in doing so. And let's be honest, it could be a permanent thing just because we don't really have an end to this pandemic as of yet. Even more so, unfortunately, it does affect local businesses, which will be struggling because they depended on that. And she wasn't wrong about the environment, because if you look up environmental news, especially on the Discovery Channel or Nat Geo, parts of the world where there used to be pollution is not. Areas where the ozone layer was missing is now repaired. And we can go into that whole thing about Gaia theory and all that stuff, but you can't deny nature. I mean, Mother Nature's gonna still be here well after we're gone. But again, going back to the whole new normal is just that if you're able to work from home, that actually might be the only way you might be able to work in certain industries. But again, that's not the only part of the new normal we have to face. The other part we have to face is, how do we feed ourselves?
Deployed across the country to help states mitigate the other painful reality from the pandemic, hunger. Lines are stretching for miles in state after state as the millions of Americans now living on the edge are facing disruptions in the food distribution chain. The challenge is expected to get worse. Maria Villarreal reports.
How long you been here?
8:15 this morning.
8:15.
Like the lines for free food in New Orleans, desperation is growing by the day. Most of these first-time families are filled with fear and uncertainty.
What are you missing at home? What's
milk, like milk, eggs, bread. We need help, like probably every city does.
Across the country, scenes of gratitude for the most basic needs, like at this food kitchen in Washington, D.C.
This program means that we get to eat today.
The National Guard helping with these lines in Boston, stretching several blocks. 17 million more Americans could now face hunger because of the coronavirus pandemic.
Thank you so much.
Back in New Orleans, at a small church pantry, we met Troy Rawls and Carolyn Caston.
Everybody got to share what they got to share.
Both are newly unemployed. No shops, no tourists, no income.
Was it hard to go there? Was there any sort of reluctance?
Oh, man. Not whatsoever. I mean, it's nothing to be ashamed of. Everybody sometimes get down on their luck.
Mashed potatoes.
You don't want to eat up everything all at one time, assuming you're going to get something else, because you don't know where that next something else is going to come from.
The couple has just enough money saved to keep up with essential bills for a few months, and they're starting to ration their food.
When you're living, you don't have to worry about surviving because you know you're living, and it's a different. Right now, it's survival move.
The New Orleans Food Bank helped more than 2,500 families on Thursday. They gave out more than 143,000 pounds of food. The national organization Feeding America says if they are going to respond to these needs over the next 6 months, they're going to need an additional $1.4 billion.
And honestly, that's actually the part of that too, where, like I said, with the new normal, you're seeing more and more of these food lines happen across the states. And I know that the title and the video didn't really make any sense, so I'll go ahead and go into that. Is that yes, Donald Trump still wants to find money for his wall. How does he do that? He goes after programs like the food program, in which he has decided that now he wants to cut down even further. Keep in mind, the previous plan that he had in place did actually cut down the food stamps to where it knocked off nearly 10 million Americans. So, again, the fact of the matter is that he wants to knock it down even further is a little fucking scary in my opinion. Because again, you have a pandemic where people cannot work or you can work from home and no source of income outside that measly $1,200 check that really did nothing, people need to find a way to put food on the table. And the food program, like SNAP, was effectively working. And now he wants to go ahead and take it down further just because he still wants this wall, this dream that he has from his first campaign promise to still be put up, and realizing that's been ineffective since that wall, or parts of the wall that were built, were cut up, did have tunnels dug under them, or my personal favorite, just were simply climbed over. But again, we should be surprised about Dorito because, well, as we're reminded of time from time, Dorito cannot handle intelligent women.
The U.S. is doing far better than any other country when it comes to testing.
Yes.
Why does that matter? Why is this a global competition to you if every day Americans are still losing their lives and we're still seeing more cases every day?
Well, they're losing their lives everywhere in the world. And maybe that's a question you should ask China. Don't ask me, ask China that question, okay? When you ask them that question, you may get a very unusual answer. Yes, behind you, please.
Sir, why are you saying that to me specifically?
I'm telling
you,
I'm not saying it specifically to anybody. I'm saying it to anybody that would ask a nasty question like that.
That's not a nasty question.
Please go ahead.
Why does it matter?
Okay, anybody else? Please, go ahead in the back, please.
I have two questions.
No, it's okay.
But
We'll
you
go
pointed
here.
to me. I have two questions, Mr.
Next,
President.
please.
But you called on me.
I did, and you didn't respond, and now I'm calling on
Sorry, I just
the
wanted
young
to,
lady in the back, please.
I just wanted to let my colleague
Okay.
finish. But can I ask you a
Ladies and
question?
gentlemen, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Dorito cannot handle intelligent women. And I know that was the big thing that, again, we shouldn't be surprised by Dorito. He has literally shown the actions of a 4-year-old that wasn't given his juicy juice before his nap. But at the same time, they did ask the question. You claim that it's gone better in the U.S. than any other state, and you go, why is that? And then your answer is, ask China. Again, this is toting the whole idea that the entire COVID-19 virus came from China. Although the Wuhan province was the first documented case of COVID-19, it does not suggest that China was behind it. Even though many a times Trump and other people, Dorito and other people that support Dorito, have turned around and sat there and said, yes, China's the source of it, China's responsible for it, even got to the point to where there was a Supreme Court, there was actually not Supreme Court ruling, there was a court ruling that people could sue China. Yes, there was a ruling that U.S. citizens could sue China because of what's happening with the effects of the COVID-19 virus. Although there has not been one scientific fact out there to prove that China is in no way or shape responsible for it. So again, why does Trump have this big issue with China? Because he's still in a tariff war with them. And to keep that tariff war, it's pretty much how prices went up in the first place on a lot of our things. Not forgetting about the simple fact of the matter is 90% of what we actually own, use, and buy comes from China. We still owe China billions of dollars because we borrowed from them during the Iraq and Afghan wars. China basically has us by the balls, and you want to sit there and blame them for an unfortunate infection that just happened to spread across the world. But you can't answer one woman's question when she asks, "Why in the world do you say ask China?" And you act just like the dictator you dream of, and decide to sit there in the interview. Simply put, because you didn't like the response, because you're usually used to your how can I put this? For someone that's so obsessed with failure, you're so obsessed with failure that all you can see is success, even though you've had very, very, well, actually no success at all this administration. Um, but I digress. But speaking of those who are always putting their foots in their mouth and apparently not actually putting it where it should be, Mitch McConnell decided this week that he sat there and said something about former President Barack Obama, saying that his how can I put this? His very brilliant observation of the administration currently and their handling of the pandemic. Mitch McConnell had some things he wanted to say.
President Obama ripped the Trump administration's response to the COVID-19 outbreak. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell had this sharp criticism of Obama.
I think President Obama should have kept his mouth shut, but I think it's a little bit classless, frankly, to critique an administration that comes after you. We want to be early ready for the next one, because clearly the Obama administration did not leave to this administration any kind of game plan for something like this.
Oh, now that was Mitch McConnell earlier this week, because what former President Barack Obama did was pretty much sit there and say, y'all fucked up. Not only did y'all fuck up, is that the fact that there was a playbook there to help with pandemic outbreaks and how to handle them. Of course, Turtle Mitch McConnell, I should say Turtle Moscow Mitch McConnell, has turned around and sat there and said, well, it's not right that a former president should come after, and a former president should come after them and accuse and basically criticize the administration that follows him. Okay. I love the fact at that point where I just want to say, Teapot, have you met Kettle McConnell? Because you accused the current administration while they were there. Did you not sit there and say that your goal with President Obama at the time was to make him a one-term president, that you would obstruct at everything that he sent in? And you're even doing it now with the Democrats. But you're going to sit there and say that a former president should not criticize the administration that follows him. Yeah, no wonder nobody likes you. Even more so that, of course, for all those who weren't paying attention to that story, hundreds of reporters have sat there and showed Mitch McConnell, oh yes, President Obama did leave you a playbook. And this is his half-ass apology.
Testifying in the House today, saying that the administration was woefully prepared, says it's still not prepared.
Those plans have been in place, and it's disappointing they were not pulled out in January of this year and followed. They were not put on the table with a strong leader indicating these are our plans, everyone fall in line and follow through with this plan.
You said that the previous administration didn't leave a plan. They pushed back against that.
I was wrong. They did leave behind a plan, so I clearly made a mistake in that regard. As to whether or not the plan was followed and who's the critic and all the rest, I don't have any observation about that because I don't know enough about the details of that, Brett, to comment on it in any detail.
Let's think about that for a second. You went from there was no plan, no playbook that was left for the administration to follow, and then after hundreds and hundreds of reporters and journalists and news outlets and even your own fucking staff sat there and showed you, yes, there was a plan. And it's amazing how he sits there and says, well, there was a plan, and we didn't follow it. But I have no critique on why we didn't follow it. Wait. You have critique on the fact that you were so sure there wasn't a playbook, realizing one was there from Jump Street. Now you have no fucking opinion? Yeah, Kentucky, do us all a favor. I'm talking to Kentucky people. I know Kentucky is one of the poorest states in the United States, next to Mississippi and Missouri. But your congressman, your senator, Turtle Mitch, he's got to go. I'm just saying, Kentucky, do us all a favor in this next election cycle. Get rid of his ass. Or hopefully he gets indicted for all the many crimes that he is a part of. But again, Kentucky, I am talking to you. Get rid of McConnell. Do the world a favor. That's all I'm saying. But aside from that, guys, also switching gears to other news, more and more of these cases are popping up because they're getting attention, and I'm glad they're getting attention, only because they need to, especially in this case of Breonna Taylor. And if you don't know who Breonna Taylor is, you're about to find out.
The death of a frontline healthcare worker who was killed during a police raid 2 months ago today. Breonna Taylor's family is suing 3 Louisville police officers after the 26-year-old woman was shot and killed in her apartment. Now, officials say this incident back in March was tied to a drug investigation where police were searching for someone else. As our national correspondent Jerika Duncan reports, Taylor's mother claims gross negligence took her daughter's life.
Breonna loved life, and she loved to help people, and she loved a family. She didn't deserve what they did to her.
Tamika Palmer is Breonna Taylor's mother. The 26-year-old was an EMT working in emergency rooms at 2 hospitals and helping respond to the coronavirus outbreak.
I was more concerned with her washing her hands than dying at home.
But just after midnight on March 13th, police shot Taylor at least 8 times, killing her in the apartment she shared with her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker.
Officers knocked on the door several times and announced their presence as police who were there with a search warrant. The officers forced entry into the exterior door and were immediately met by gunfire.
Louisville Metro Police say the officers were part of a narcotics investigation and opened fire after Walker shot first. They're now on administrative reassignment pending the results of an internal investigation. The lawsuit against the officers claims the suspect they were searching for was already in custody. Taylor's family alleges the officers wearing plain clothes did not identify themselves and that Walker, a registered gun owner, was shooting at men he believed were breaking in. Walker is now charged with first-degree assault and attempted murder of a police officer.
They thought they were being burglarized. Does the Second Amendment not apply to African Americans?
Attorney Ben Crump joined Breonna Taylor's case this week. He is also representing the family of Ahmaud Arbery, who was shot dead in February while on a run in his Georgia neighborhood.
This was a completely unnecessary and justifiable killing of an innocent woman.
For CBS This Morning, Jerika Duncan.
And yes, Breonna Taylor and that story again. And many other stories like this are coming forward now, and I'm glad that they are, because these stories deserve national attention. But the simple fact of the matter, there is no way that you can explain, number one, that you got the wrong house. Number two, that a lot of holes in the story with the police side aren't adding up. For number one, you had a warrant, yet no one checked to see if the suspect was already in custody. Now, what they didn't say, which I'm going to do more research on, was the suspect in custody before? I would have to assume before this, because again, it just sounds like lazy detective work. On top of that, they entered through the rear door. So you have a search warrant, but you're going through the rear door. Okay, so if I'm asleep and me and my wife and my kids are in my home, police decide to go through the rear door of my home, I hear people in there not announcing themselves as police, and I'm a registered gun owner, I'll be shooting right along with them. Because the simple fact of the matter is, I don't know who's entering my home. I don't blame the simple fact of what that man did, of what the I guess the boyfriend or fiance of Miss Taylor. Because honestly, he shouldn't be charged for attempting to murder a police officer. Because let's be honest, you're not going to shoot at a police officer if you can identify them. But it's dark in your house, your adrenaline's up, you don't know somebody might be coming to harm you, your wife, or your kids. I'm sorry, if you ain't announcing yourself, I'd shoot you too. That's just me. But again, this whole story with the police, like I said, being on administrative reassignment tells me that they're not even in the state. And trust me, law enforcement has a habit of doing this. They say for the officer's safety is that they'll make sure that there are states between where the incident happened and where they are. No different than really a lot of cases, especially the one that happened here in Tennessee, where an officer is still waiting to stand trial because he literally shot a black man running away from him. He was no threat, and he still shot him. So again, I shouldn't be surprised in this case to where, yes, they should be brought up on charges, or they should at least be dropped off the force. Their pension should be revoked, and for the simple fact of the matter, they honestly should stand trial for this. Now, where that's going to happen, it depends on where the case of the story goes. But speaking of the other case, we talked about Ahmaud Arbery. I cannot believe that some lawyers, and I understand lawyers have to have a moral vacuum because honestly, even though the evidence is astoundingly clear, everybody is presumed innocent until guilty in court. However, what this lawyer has done it's almost Johnny Cochran level as far as how he's explained this.
They are learning more about what happened before and after this video showing the final moments of Ahmaud Arbery's life.
All of the facts will come out. That's the purpose of a trial.
Travis and his father, Gregory McMichael, are both in jail charged with Arbery's murder. Father and son have separate legal teams. Attorneys for the senior McMichael say in a statement, the full story will tell the truth about this case. Video of that February shooting has sparked nationwide outrage. Arbery's family says the 25-year-old was just out for a jog, unarmed. According to the police report, Gregory McMichael told police he and son Travis grabbed their guns and followed Arbery because they thought he was a burglary suspect. McMichael told police Travis fired when Arbery violently attacked and the two started fighting over the shotgun.
Travis has a presumption of innocence. That presumption of innocence follows him from now throughout the course of this trial until and unless a jury decides that he is not innocent.
We wish that Travis and Gregory McMichael would have afforded that same presumption of innocence to Ahmaud Arbery, who was murdered without a trial, without any real evidence that he had committed a crime at all.
Now, attorneys for Arbery's family want to find the person who wrote this anonymous handwritten note left at a memorial. It reads, Ahmaud, I am so sorry. I should have stopped them.
So this is not a person who just feels bad about what happened in general. This is a person who at least felt like they had power to prevent this, that they had some sort of foreknowledge about what was going on.
Investigators say they know who wrote the note, and that person is not connected to the investigation in any way and was just expressing their condolences.
So I do gotta ask that question, of course, with Ahmaud Arbery. Of course, the lawyers are gonna sit there and say, well, the full story of the case is gonna come out. What's there to identify? Because I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I'm used to the simple fact of the matter of when a black person is killed, the first thing it's always done is to try to find dirt on them. They'll try to find any other way to vilify them, to sit there and say that their choices or decisions in life led to led to their eventual demise. However, in this case, they've already started because they showed video earlier this week of Ahmaud entering a construction zone, which they say it is. They haven't really confirmed it's him or not. But it shows video of a young black man entering a construction zone, looking around, and of course, nothing was reported stolen. There are injunctions that he might have actually went in there for water, just because there was water sources around there. But either way, with all that withstanding, it does not explain why a father and son decide to go play officers, take guns, and go confront someone. It doesn't take away from the fact that you see two people coming to you armed to the teeth, yeah, you're going to fight too. And again, there's no justification in the world aside from saying that, he feared for his life or he was within his rights as a citizen's arrest, which, by the way, a citizen's arrest is such a gray area because anybody can do a citizen's arrest. It doesn't mean that you should. It also doesn't mean that you can use your gun like a cop because you're not one. And almost at the same time, it is almost academic at this point that they should be convicted, because we've seen arrests happen all the time. We have seen arrests happen with these individuals all the time, but we never do really see the proper justice. I mean, I could go back to Botham Jean, where Amber Geiger only got 10 years. 10 years for going into the wrong apartment, killing an individual, and then trying to cover it up. But she only got 10 years in prison. So, forgive me if I'm not very optimistic about this, just because, when it comes to the simple fact of those who are acting with a gun and trying to claim innocence or defense or fear for my life, never really works out to the point to where, again, they kind of get off easy. So we'll see what happens with that case going forward, as we'll follow it as it goes. But another strange thing I have to point out about Dorito is that his lawyers are asking for temporary presidential immunity. I wish I could make this up.
In our nation's history, has issued criminal process against the sitting president of the United States, and for good reason. The Constitution does not allow it. Temporary presidential immunity is constitutionally required. The decision would allow any DA to harass, distract, and interfere with the sitting president. It subjects the president to local prejudice that can influence prosecutorial decisions, and to state grand juries who can then be utilized to issue compulsory criminal process in the form of subpoenas targeting the president. This is not mere speculation. It is precisely what has taken place in this case, and with this subpoena we challenge.
You don't argue that the grand jury cannot investigate the president, do you?
We have targeted the utilization of the temporary immunity here to the subpoena. That's correct.
Well, in other words, it's okay for the grand jury to investigate, except it can't use the traditional and most effective device that grand juries have typically used, which is the subpoena.
Counsel, it seems that you're asking for a broadness of immunity that Justice Thomas pointed out is nowhere in the Constitution. I'm not sure why he's entitled to more immunity for private acts than he should be for public acts.
Well, he's the President of the United States. He is a branch of the federal government.
We only give judicial officers and congressional officers immunity for acts within their official capacity. If they don't, if judges sexually harass someone, we've said that's not within judicial functions, they can be sued. If congressmen do the same thing, they can be sued.
We're asking for temporary presidential immunity. There are hundreds of members of the United States Congress and 100 members of the United States Senate. There is one president.
So basically, the argument that that Dorito's personal lawyer is saying is that they're asking for temporary presidential immunity. I know for a lot of us out there, we're like, well, doesn't he have that already? Not exactly true. He's actually influenced from the presidential seat a lot of areas, such as the branch of, such as the Supreme Court, because he's pretty much asked to jump into everything that involves him. He has the Department of Justice, where his personal attorney, William Barr, has pretty much all but dismantled the previous Mueller investigation. And he has his own person at the IRS, where Mnuchin is defensively making sure that none of his tax returns ever get released. So that's not immunity, that's kind of a mafia move. So what they're pretty much saying is that anybody else, whether they are public or state attorneys and other corporations, can come forward and sue Dorito as he stands now. Presidential immunity would prevent that. However, the Supreme Court is simply saying, well, that's the right of the American people. They know that everyone should be held accountable. But apparently the president wants to be like a tyrant and say that no charge should be brought against him, in which I thought that was probably just a waste of the Supreme Court's time to even listen to this argument, because it just goes to show you that Dorito is guilty if he has to have all of this protection against him. So again, a waste of time, really. Also, I won't say also a waste of time. For all those that do know that the House did, as of yesterday, did pass their HEROES Act. Now, for all those who are wondering, it is similar to the CARES Act, the act that President Dorito was so happy about, that he can give you a single amount of $1,200 to individuals, and of course 2,400 to couples, and I guess another less than 500 to every child dependent. So again, with the Democrats coming out with their own bill, which did get passed, they did say in their bill that nearly $1 trillion would be in aid to state and local governments. It would extend the $600 benefit to unemployed workers on top of what they're already getting, all the way through January of next year. It did expand about the fact of coronavirus testing and treatment. It did talk about enhancing tax credits for employers to keep the workers on payrolls, to help renters and minority owners make rent, mortgage, utility payments. $10 billion would go to the SNAP program, and $3.6 billion would go to states for contingency planning and preparation for electoral office. Now that part is the part that I want to get. The part that I'm going to get to. But I will say this before I do go with anything else, and thank you everybody who's watching. Alex did see your comment. I'm surprised he actually admitted that he was wrong. Now, if he's feigning ignorance on the not knowing enough about the plan, is up for debate. Oh, he knew. He just didn't give a shit. So let me get to this part about the Democrats' plan. I personally believe it's not enough. As long as the coronavirus is keeping people from home, as long as the coronavirus is really, as long as we're staying home and trying to keep our social distancing, people need help. I mean, the fact that we don't still have a national moratorium on utility bills and mortgage payments is astounding to me. We have a federal one, which only covers certainly federal back areas, but we don't have a national one where it covers everybody, which we should have had from Jump Street. Also, at the same time, we still do not have the ability of actual payments and things of that nature. So, again, Canada got it right when they sat there and turned around and gave their constituents $2,000 a month just because of, well, they need it. And they also did do a nationwide moratorium on utilities and rent payments. They did all this in a matter of days. So it's not surprising at this point that really we should not already be doing this in America. But again, we're not. But with it being passed, of course, Trump couldn't wait to sit there and explain his disposition as far as the new plan.
With the mail-in ballots, it's subject to tremendous corruption, cheating. And so I'm against it. And if you look at the bill that Nancy Pelosi is putting in, has a lot to do with elections, and then we're not gonna lose elections because of that.
Is that bill a non-starter?
And I do think you should mention the fact that the Republicans won 2 major congressional seats last night. I think it's really worthy of mentioning.
Mr. President, do you believe that the judge presiding over the Mike Flynn case,
well, let's finish with your question.
Okay. Is that bill a non-starter? Is there anything in there you could support? Or?
Well, it's, as they say, DOA, right?
Okay.
DOA, dead on arrival.
Mr. President,
Of course, Nancy Pelosi knows that, obviously.
Thank you, Mr. President.
So pretty much that's the part where Dorito is stuck on, because apparently everything else seemed to blow right past him, but when it got to that point where it sat there and said, we're going to give money for electoral offices and mail-in ballots. Now, honestly, I'm surprised at this point, as far as technology has gotten us, that we have yet to figure out how to actually vote by smartphone. I personally think that needs to happen. I personally think that, I'll be honest with you, I personally believe that Electoral Day should be a national holiday and that everybody should be given the right to vote. I think that pretty much they should treat it like every other holiday. Everybody's off work to go vote. We can knock all this out in one day. And I personally think that, yes, you should be able to mail in your ballots. I personally believe that we should be on the cusp of actually creating an app that allows us to electronically vote safely. We have all this technology, and yet we are still having to figure out ways of going to go vote, whether it's early voting or not. We still have to figure out ways of getting there, getting registered, jumping through all these hoops, and yet we can simplify it. But this is where Dorito has the problem. He says mail-in ballots is nothing but seeds of corruption. Keep in mind, there has yet to be a record of any type of corruption or voter fraud or anything of that nature that has happened with mail-in ballots. I will say this, for the political party of the Republicans, to sit there and claim about voter fraud. Keep in mind, four out of their 5 states where they had voter fraud was really on the part of a few Republican strategists who decided that their candidate had to win above nothing else. So it's amazing to me how the party that always screams voter fraud is usually the ones caught with their hand in the cookie jar. Figure that one out. But again, with it passing the House, it does go up to the Senate, and like everybody else, Turtle Mitch McConnell may not even allow it to be heard, so it could be dead as it arrives on the floor, which I think is interesting because the CARES Act that President Dorito pushed forward had no issue going through the Senate, although the Hero CARES Act does have some slight differences in it from the original. The HEROES Act has some differences from the CARES Act, and yet only because it wasn't submitted by a Republican does it arrive dead on arrival, because it was something Dorito didn't do. And even though the plan doesn't do a lot, the plan should be doing a way lot more. But it's more than what the CARES Act did, which basically there's still people still waiting to get their stimulus checks. But anyway, Doritos pretty much kept his foot in his mouth all week because he has now decided that we're going to have a vaccine by the end of the year. And we know what we're going to call this operation Warp Speed.
Update you on the next stage of this momentous medical initiative. It's called Operation Warp Speed. That means big and it means fast. A massive scientific, industrial, and logistical endeavor unlike anything our country has seen since the Manhattan Project. You really could say that nobody's seen anything like we're doing, whether it's ventilators or testing. Nobody's seen anything like we're doing now within our country since the Second World War. Incredible. Its objective is to finish developing and then to manufacture and distribute a proven coronavirus vaccine as fast as possible. Again, we'd love to see if we could do it prior to the end of the year. We think we're going to have some very good results coming out very quickly. In addition, it will continue accelerating the development of diagnostics and breakthrough therapies.
I have very recently seen early data from a clinical trial with a coronavirus vaccine. And these data made me feel even more confident that we will be able to deliver a few 100 million doses of vaccine by the end of 2020.
We will deliver, by the end of this year, a vaccine at scale to treat the American people and our partners abroad.
This doesn't fit with any timeline that we've ever heard before with regard to vaccines. Typically you're talking about many years, not many months with something like this. You clearly are hearing from some very impressive individuals who have a long history of vaccine development.
Okay, so that just pretty much goes into, Dr. Google's actually going to go into the subject at that point. That's the reason why I stopped it. But yes, Operation Warp Speed, because Dorito believes that the virus there is a virus vaccine that could happen by the end of the year. Keep in mind, he also sat there and said that the virus can be destroyed by heat. He also sat there and said that the virus can be cured by Easter. He also sat there and said that he could actually fix the economy. He also sat there and said that, well, he's intelligent. Well, you can't win them all. So again, this is a whole other thing, and I'm also, as a Trekkie fan, I'm kind of annoyed because he keeps taking the simple fact of certain names and logos, insignias, especially from that stupid ass Space Force, which by the way is still going forward. Figure that one out. But again, he has such a misunderstanding of viruses and vaccines. Vaccines literally take years to develop. They never are done within the same. It's not even a record of where a sickness and a vaccine had occurred in the genesis of its outbreak. It's never been heard of. Even measles vaccine took several years. Same for mumps, same for shingles, same for chickenpox. I mean, literally, there's not a disease out there that a cure or vaccine wasn't created in the same year of the outbreak. I looked it up. It's really not. So again, the whole idea of him wanting to sit there and say, oh, by the end of the year, we should have this. And the thing that you should take away from that, Dr. Fauci was back there behind him, mask on, and didn't say a goddamn thing. And yet you have these new people come up like you're giving a business management meeting and you're bringing the senior leadership team on there and they're supposed to jazz up the crowd about, oh, we are very, very optimistic about this. And really, you're just fluffing. There's nothing out there. I mean, granted, there are a lot of trials going on, but the scientific community as a whole has already said it. That it could honestly take years before a vaccine, a safe vaccine, is created and administered, and it's going to take a while. Unfortunately, that's the honest answer. It is going to take a while. And of course, in Doritos' world, it's because he decides that he wants to go ahead and push forward on this that it should happen. And that alone is nuts. Speaking of nuts, you want to hear about Obamagate? Again, well, we thought it was over, and yet they keep bringing this up.
A list of Obama administration officials who sought the names of Americans discussed in intelligence reports in the weeks before Donald Trump took office.
Well, the unmasking is a massive thing.
It's the latest attempt to discredit the FBI's Russia investigation and accuse the Obama administration of undermining President Trump and his first national security advisor, Michael Flynn. The list names top Obama officials who, quote, may have received Flynn's identity. It includes former Vice President Joe Biden. During the transition, Flynn made phone calls to foreign officials and later lied to the FBI about what he discussed. The calls were picked up in surveillance of foreign diplomats. Americans' names are redacted in foreign intelligence reports. Requesting to unredact them or unmask them is routine intelligence work. There's no evidence the requests were made for political purposes.
Procedures weren't bypassed, rules weren't broken, all of the rules were followed. This was an individual who was captured and overheard on a lawful surveillance of a valid foreign intelligence target, as far as we can surmise from the documents.
Senate Homeland Security Chairman Ron Johnson and Senator Chuck Grassley, who jointly released the list of names after they were declassified by Acting Director of National Intelligence Rick Grinnell, admitted they don't know if the document revealed wrongdoing. I'm alleging nothing, Johnson said. A document from the National Security Agency notes that the officials who requested the unmasking were authorized to do so. The practice is routine in the Trump administration, too.
So, just to go ahead and cut that short, literally, it's somebody that just wants to sit there and bring attention to themselves, much like your Candace Owens and everybody else that's a conservative talking point. They just simply want to make noise, deflect, and distract. When simply put, there is no Obamagate. It's about as much as a conspiracy as to why President Obama wore a tan suit. The man wanted to look fresh that day. You tell me as a president you can't wear a fresh suit without being judged? Oh, he was also black too, so I guess that has something to do with the fact of why they're hating. But aside from that, this also, to me, is, again, the story that doesn't make any sense. The cop that was hiding during the Parkland shooting just got back his job. Even more so, he gets back pay.
Handling of the shooting at that high school in Parkland, Florida, he's getting his job back. Sergeant Brian Miller was one of 4 officers fired last year after an investigation found they neglected their duties when they responded to the shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School that left 17 people dead. The probe found that Miller, who was the first supervising officer on the scene, hid behind his car during the shooting, but the police union ruled that Miller was denied due process and improperly terminated, so now he'll get full back pay and seniority when he goes back to work. The sheriff's office blasted the decision, saying it was wrongly decided and based on a technicality.
Yeah, that's fucked up, don't you? I'm sorry. There are a lot of things in this world that are fucked up. But you're telling me a guy whose job was to protect kids, when shit went down, hid behind his car, and stayed there, then for his actions, he was rightfully fired from the force, and you're going to sit there and tell me because of a technicality that man is not only going to get his job back, but get back his benefits and back pay since then. How the fuck is that fair? I mean, your whole job was defending children. You didn't even do it. You literally, your self-preservation kicked in. So again, you failed in your job. Kids were killed. How is it right that you get your job back? That is my question. Because again, I don't blame the sheriff's department for what they said. It's a terrible decision to turn around and basically give somebody like, oh, you didn't do your job, but we didn't actually process you right. So here you go. So I can only think that, was there a massive lawsuit that was coming, or they were just trying to cover the head? But either way, it doesn't take from the simple fact. The matter is that 19 plus kids from Parkland are not around to even see their graduation. But yet, this individual, this coward, is allowed to turn around and have his job back. That in itself is asinine. But also, what else is asinine is that I've been saying this over a couple of podcasts about these senators that were dropping stocks basically before the pandemic. And I kept on saying that, yes, there has to be some sort of connection just because these senators and representatives get information faster than what we do. And if you're getting information about stocks, particularly stocks that you have, specifically markets that affect the stocks that you have, it seems fishy that you wouldn't just, for sake of saving your own money, wouldn't buy or sell before everybody else before the proverbial shit hits the fan. Which in this case, this senator of the intelligence community has some explaining to do.
Of a powerful senator, the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, temporarily stepping aside from his post as the feds investigate whether he used inside information to sell stocks and save big money before the pandemic tanked the market. Pete Williams is in Washington tonight. Pete, what do we know?
Well, Lester, these allegations first surfaced in March, but now this investigation is clearly in a new phase. And tonight, Senator Richard Burr, Republican of North Carolina, says it's become a distraction, so he's stepping down for now as the intelligence chairman. Law enforcement officials say just last night, the FBI went to Senator Burr's Washington, D.C. home to get his cell phone after showing his lawyer a search warrant. That would require a judge's finding that there's probable cause to think the phone could contain evidence of a crime. Law enforcement officials say they're investigating whether Burr engaged in insider trading, but he has said that his stock sales before the pandemic dragged down the market were based strictly on public information.
So I have a problem with that. Not only are you the head of the intelligence community, you're the head of the intelligence committee, which means that a lot more stuff comes to you than it would come to anywhere else. Almost second to the Secretary of Defense, third really to the Department of the Interior. So again, yeah, you do have a lot of explaining to do. Because again, you're selling stocks, and it's kind of, I sit there and say, I kept saying this the entire time. Every senator and representative that has stocks is guilty of this. Like, if you just happen to sell before the ceiling breaks, that alone is suspect. And he wasn't the only one. Many other representatives and other politicians have actually done it. But again, I've always said this as well. If you say, for instance, if you have stocks in produce, things of that nature, but you understand that you also get farm reports of crops and harvests. And if you know that 1 year is going to be a good market or 1 year is going to be a bad market, and you see it coming, again, you have stocks in this, the temptation is too great. If you know you're having a good year, you're going to go ahead and buy before everybody else does. If you know it's going to be a bad year, you're going to sell before anybody else gets wind of it. It's insider trading. It's illegal. And even more so, and Alex, you beat me to it. If you hold, I know, and Alex said, in my opinion, if you hold a position in Congress, you shouldn't be allowed to have stocks. Yes, you shouldn't, because I completely agree. You should not own any stocks if you're in a position to where you honestly get the information before the stock market does. You influence the stock market by your own gain. So yes, I used to sit there and say, well, that's a little bit extreme. I used to sit there and say, well, you can't hold stocks in the information that you get. For example, like I said, going back to my farm example, if you own stocks in agriculture, then you yourself cannot receive or attain any information dealing with agriculture. Or if you invest in big tech, and you're basically getting reports of innovation, things coming down the line. You can't invest in it. It honestly should be the complete opposite. But again, because of how information can be obtained so easily through these offices, that rule might not even be effective. So like Alex said, the best way to actually ensure that these people are making money off their own jobs is to ensure that they just cannot have any stocks at all. But even more shocking is like that as people are starting to see this, it's just that every politician out there, like I've always said it best, you've never seen a broke politician. You've never seen it. Most politicians, either in the House of Representatives or Senate, are usually millionaires and sometimes billionaires. None of them are broke. I mean, aside from the fact that depending on their position, they can make anywhere from I think the lowest position for a representative is 100,000 plus a year. A senator makes 170,000 plus a year. So again, this goes this whole idea, and keep in mind, they're getting paid for life. Senators, representatives, they get paid for life. Their benefits, their health care, their pay, even after leaving the office, they still get paid for life. And think about that. If you're making 100,000 plus a year, and you're getting that for the rest of your days, and add the cherry on top, the fact of what you can do with these stocks, there is a reason why money and corruption and politics go hand in hand, because again, the temptation is too fucking great. So, like Alex said, the simple fact of the matter is, politicians should not be able to own stocks because they have way too much access to anything else. That's just being honest. But that's really going to do it for our news, and we're going to go ahead and go into our good news, feel-good news segment, because on the How the Frack We Got Here, we do go through a lot of news that can sometimes be disheartening, sometimes can be gloomy, and overall just bad. So because this always happens on the weekend for a lot of us who aren't working, we try to leave on a good note, try to have you feeling good, try to look forward to it, and depending on where you are in the U.S., you could be looking at sunny skies, or you could be looking at snow if you're up north, but we try to leave you with a good feeling because, you know, we could all use a good feeling right now. And even more so, this one story I have about this one baker and what he actually did. Now, this baker literally decided that he wanted to bake a singing graduation cake for all students in these schools. Now, keep in mind, he decided to do it for 12 schools, 800 graduation cakes for 5 weeks. Holy crap. And I have to give it to the guy, because let's be honest, wherever you are right now, people are having drive-by or Zoom graduations just because, like I said, it's hard to actually have large gatherings with COVID-19. So wherever you are is just trying to make the best of these seniors, because let me be honest, class of 2020, I thought 2001 was going to be well, not to say my age, but my class 2001, I thought we were the shit. But you guys of 2020, they gonna start calling you the COVID-19 generation. But anyway, I love the fact that what he decided he took upon himself, because he decided that every graduate deserves to have a cake. And honestly, that's cool. That is very cool. Like I said before, the little things are always appreciated, especially for that. But I'll be honest with you, 800 cakes, holy crap. That's all I can sit there and say. Even more so, another story I have is where this church decided to give back. This church, actually in my home state of Tennessee, Gillisville Church, decided to donate money to 3 businesses in the communities where its members worship, just to basically keep them afloat. And I'll be honest with you, when I first read this story, I'm like, well, I mean, you did give to your members, but at the same time, you rarely hear about churches actually giving back. Wait a minute. No, I meant it that way. You rarely do hear about churches giving back. Now, I'm not saying all churches have to be national and public news, and I'm more than sure there are churches out there that are giving back to the community, but in this case, this church is really trying to help people stay employed by helping the businesses that employ them. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. I always say it best, you know, if you can give, you definitely should. But at the same time with churches, in my opinion on churches, that's a whole other subject. But again, it's nice to see that some churches out there are just trying to keep their neighbors and communities afloat by doing what they can and donating where they can. The next story I have here is really a video, because like I said, I love seeing kids excel. that could be the fact of I have a little bit of an educator teacher kind of thing in me, because I've always said it best. I have a soft spot for educators and teachers, because if it wasn't for them and their impact on me, I wouldn't be the person who I am. So I love the fact of seeing kids who excel, and I mean really excel. Just makes me feel better, especially these two twins.
Twin sisters celebrating their accomplishments after being accepted into nearly 40 universities.
This is so impressive. Together, they received more than $1 million in scholarships. CBS 58's Christine Flores talked to the sisters and has their message for other students.
The sisters are seniors here at Howard Fuller Collegiate Academy. They were very excited to share their final school choice and eager to start school in the fall. Their career choice, nursing.
This is not really a completion for me. I'm just getting started. I feel partially relieved. Yeah.
Ariana is graduating first in her class with her twin sister Ariel right behind her in second. They were accepted to 38 schools and received more than $1 million in scholarships each.
We've always been those overachievers, throughout school period. We never wanted to just do the basics. The bare minimum. We always wanted to go above and do beyond that.
In fact, their school requires seniors to apply to a certain number of schools.
The requirement was 3. I said, well, I want to do 30. I applied to schools in Alaska. I'm like, I'm not going there, but it's like, why not?
Some of those top choices included
Grambling, and we were thinking about Hampton. We were thinking about Benedict. We got a full ride there. Yeah, we got full rides to Benedict, but they didn't have our major.
The two want to go into nursing. It runs in their family. They also don't want to be far from home. That's why Marquette seemed like the best fit.
Tuition, we're pretty much covered. We got accepted into the EOP program. We got accepted directly into the nursing program.
While they admit their journey here wasn't easy, they have advice for others as they navigate through life.
It's okay to fail sometimes. You got to accept some failure. It's okay to fail sometimes. Just come back harder. And another thing, do not be lazy, guys. Do not procrastinate. Do the most. They told us that we were doing the most with all these colleges. Do the most. Go above and beyond.
The sisters hope to serve as an example for other students who may have found it difficult to stay on track during this pandemic. Reporting in
Now, I'm not going to lie. If I was the father of those daughters, if I was the father of those two twins, I would be bragging my ass off. I mean, you should always be proud of your kids. Do not get me wrong. You should be proud of your kids, especially if they decide to go to higher learning, like colleges, things of that nature. But let's be honest. The parents of those two, you know they're going to find some way to insert that into any conversation. Y'all know my baby's got accepted to 38 colleges, right? 38 colleges and full ride scholarship. God is good. And we heard. We know. We know. But you know my baby's got accepted. We know. We know they got accepted. You know, we know you're happy. Oh, I would be a terrible ass parent. I'm not gonna lie. If my kids excelled that way, oh, I would be fucking terrible. I would be I would be that parent. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. But the last story I do have, guys, is basically of this one. I said this story is exactly what I've been talking about when it comes to community help, where these two guys right here are actually help to feed the community, because they're in Western Pennsylvania, and the story about these guys is that they grew up in the same town, and now they actually saw that with schools being closed for COVID-19 and people working from home, they realized that people, mainly kids, are not getting the meals, considering that the meals that they were getting from schools they're not getting now, which schools are all you're guaranteed that you at least, when your kids are going to school, you were guaranteed they were going to get at least breakfast and lunch. And now that they're barely getting lunch and dinner, that they decided to take it upon themselves to start a coalition, to start actually packing up sandwiches, things of that nature. And of course, throughout this story, other people have come forward, where one pastor actually opened up his church as a delivery point to where they can only make the food, but people can come and pick it up. So it actually became to the point to where it was supposed to be something small and actually have an impact, to where actually other people came along and actually made it bigger than what it is. And they were actually able to not only deliver food, but actually begin to load up cars, because cars started showing up there for food lines. But again, the simple fact of the matter is that these individuals right here that I keep on wanting to show is that because they had a simple idea and they had a simple drive to actually help their community, and that other people came forward as far as how we can feed these kids and how, we went from kids to adults and things of that nature, it goes to show you that, yes, even without government assistance, I've sat there and said before, and I'll sit there and say it again, if you have a village mentality and other people have a village mentality just like you, then you can affect a lot of people. You can actually affect the change in your community. And like I said before, like my favorite president, President Obama once said, he says, the change itself starts with us. I mean, you can't expect government to come in and actually do the work for you. We have to do the work ourselves, and it starts with our town, in which our town becomes a state, and other states follow from there. And you can see that in communities, because if we had the same village mentality during this time, we would all get through it. But again, that's just me. So that's all the stuff we have here for How the Frack We Got Here, guys. I do thank everybody for watching. Thank you who all liked, shared, started watch parties, who commented, who peeked their head in. I certainly appreciate it. And of course, the scrolling thing above my head is just Cash App, just to actually help to actually make the show better as far as equipment, lighting, things of that nature, which things are coming down the pipe, which I'm so excited about. I just can't talk about it yet just because, again, it's all in the planning stages, but I'm so very, very amped to see where it goes from there. But anyway, let me go ahead and get some shameless plugging out of my way. I am not the only cat that does actually have podcasting. I'll start with my buddy Vaughn, Big BZA Dot on Facebook, Big BZA Dot on podcast on YouTube, and Big BZA Dot on Twitch. Has a couple podcasts of his own. The first one is called The BSTs, which is the news podcast. That news can be music, video games, or trailers, as he loves to show. Interactive show just like mine. He also has Rhythm This, where you can reminisce over the rhythm, in which he goes over the albums of the past and present and grades to a 4-tier rating system. If you want to know what that rating system is, you have to watch Rhythm This to find out. And he also has Random as Fuck when it goes easy. What is Random as Fuck? Random as Fuck is the pool of ratchetness we sometimes dip our toes into to take a break from life and also have a chuckle. Some videos will make you think, some videos make you cry, some videos will make you go, this was brought to you by the letters WTF. But it's still entertaining as all get out. All of his shows completely interactive and can be found on his social media pages of Big BZA Dot on Facebook, Big BZA Dot on YouTube, and Big BZA Dot on Twitch. Sometime today, we hope, Thomas Reed, aka the Mountain Puncher, will actually have his To Be Determined podcast. If you've seen Thomas Reed on Facebook, he is a dude that stays in the gym, who's probably having gym withdrawals right now, probably doing chin-ups on a street light or wherever there's concrete. But he is a guy who loves to talk about fitness, loves to talk about workouts, nutrition, and gives his own personal testimony, and actually wants to help people just find their personal zenith as he tries to strive for his. But his show, To Be Determined, is every Saturday from 3 to 5. Just look up on his Facebook, Thomas Reed, or his YouTube page at the number 2, letter T, letter B, letter D. That is 2TBD. Why? Because we're trying to beat YouTube's algorithm. That's why. And also, my other brother, Trace Brown, King Eddie Wayne on Facebook, DJ King Wayne on YouTube, and DJ King Wayne on Twitch, has a couple of podcasts of his own. The first one is called The Bump Down. It's music, culture, knowledge, and numbers, in which I always said it best. This is a show where he gives not only his opinion on the musical industry, but shows what's hot, what's not, and also upcoming artists that I call him Negro Damas, because whoever he picks seems to be the ones that blow up. He's picked Meg Thee Stallion, The Baby, Moneybagg Yo, and many others, and I've always said it best. It's always interesting to see his opinion on the music industry, because I've learned so much more from him than honestly than I did from any other news outlet when it comes to the recording industry. But also leading from that goes to The Smoke with Truth. It is the most check your ego at the door podcast. I like I said before, Trace is probably the most unorthodox individual I've ever met, but he has such an opinion that I think needs to be heard. And if you're willing to talk with him, then dag nabbit, he's willing to talk to you, because Trace always wants all the smoke. Now, aside from yours truly, I do have a couple of podcasts of my own. Of course, every Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon is the How the Frack We Got Here podcast. Later tonight, between 8 to 10 p.m., will be the Off Limits podcast. I like to call it the Community Building No Frills podcast. Simply put, because we talk about anything and everything. And I do mean anything and everything, because I believe that any subject can be talked about in a civilized, progressive manner if people are willing to do it. And also from that, my other show on Sunday between 5 to 7 p.m. will be my show Get Bit. That is my Blurred podcast, in which we cover anime, video games, comic books, music, pretty much everything a Blurred and Geek would love. We actually go into it from there. And of course, Tuesday between 9 to 10 p.m. is my storytelling podcast, the Burned Out Podcast, in which I tell all the wondrous stories from IT that I believe can be beneficial and funny, because trust me, they were to me. But all my shows can be found under my Facebook page at William Buchanan. I've been told it's very easy to find me, especially if you're watching this on Facebook right now. And also, my shows actually have Facebook pages and YouTube pages. So you simply have to look up How the Frack We Got Here, the Octopus Podcast, the Burned Out Podcast, and the Get Bit Podcast. That is GITBIT, and basically like, share, and subscribe from there. Aside from that, guys, the only thing I want to say is thank you all those who are essential workers, who are 911 responders, who are law enforcement, fire department, MTS, those are working in hospitals, doctors, nurses aides, environmental services, those that are working in stores, those that are working in grocery stores, those that are working in UPS, FedEx, DHL, Amazon, truckers, because you guys are not giving enough credit. The simple fact of the matter is, if it wasn't for you guys pulling your loads across the world right now, there'd be a lot of shut down cities. But aside from that, from everybody else who I wasn't able to name, but still have to make a decision to risk their lives and go into work and just try to do the best they can, more should be done for you guys. But from our standpoint, the best we can do is make sure that you are recognized. Because let's be honest, yes, you are heroes for what you do, but damn it, if I was y'all, especially in the medical field, and you got student loans, I don't know about y'all, but I would be sitting there saying, hey, our student loans need to be wiped clean. I'm just saying. But anyway, the last thing I'll say about How the Frack We Got Here, like I said, it's all about staying informed. Staying informed means that you're not accepting everything at face value. It is encouraging you to go out there and find the truth for yourself. That means looking at the source, making sure that's legitimate, and being able to bring it back to somebody else, being encouraged them to do the same thing. We're not out here to persuade people, change minds, or change the world. We are simply out here to do what the news is made to do. And the news, what it's made to do, it's supposed to present all the facts up to you and allow you to make up your own damn mind. So, because the reason why we ask that, an informed community can make a lot better decisions than an uninformed one, because the uninformed one got us Dorito, and that's how the frack we got here. I thank everybody for watching all this, and if you're watching this live, like you said before, like I said, I thank everybody that's commented, and also if you're watching this on the playback, please go ahead and comment as if it's here, because I still want to know how everybody feels. And like I say at the end of every one of my shows, if you like what I did, please let me know. If you didn't like what I did, please let me know. I'm open to criticism either way, as I'm just trying to make this platform more enjoyable for everybody to watch. Hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. I am out. Hopefully see you on the other podcast later on tonight. Tonight. Peace.